All right, I'm going to go ahead and start to kick off the call. So welcome everyone. Happy October. Welcome to the Adaptive Cloud Community Call. If this is your first time joining the call, welcome. This call is focused on the cloud community product and service updates. So topics range again from Azure Arc to Azure Stack HCI, Azure IoT, AKS. Presenters today will go over their topics, and at the end, we'll typically engage in a Q&A. You all should have a Q&A button on the top bar of your team's icons. From there, you can ask questions for the presenters, and they can get back to you through that. But if you want to have a more in-depth conversation, feel free to hold your questions at the end, and then presenters can answer your questions then. I already kind of went over this one, so I'll go over to the next slide. So as you all know, this is our GitHub. This is a public repository, so you should all be able to go and access that now. If you would like, our GitHub page acts as kind of a one-stop shop for all of the meeting invites, the calendar invites, previous slide decks, adaptive cloud resources, any prior recordings, all of that type of stuff. Speaking of prior recordings, all of our recordings are posted on our YouTube page, on the Arc Jumpstart page. So if you have colleagues or friends that missed this call but wanted to join today, it is recorded and it will be posted on YouTube for you all to view. Or if you want to reference anything that was discussed today, that again is all posted on YouTube. This is our Adaptive Cloud Community LinkedIn group. This is a relatively new thing. I think I spoke about it in the last two calls, but if you haven't already, please join. There we post regular updates. It's somewhat similar to the Teams channel that we host if you all are a part of that, but it just allows people to give product updates through there. And then if you want to engage in a conversation or ask questions, you can do that through that space as well. It's just a good way to kind of get new connections out there if you don't already have them built within your own LinkedIn, your personal LinkedIn profile. So it's just a good space to promote anything that you're working on. Something new that I wanted to talk about was this live stream that we have going on today. So if you're familiar with some of the work that the rest of the team has been doing, there are regular Jumpstart diagrams that are created. Lior, you can see him in the the thumbnail, though he'll probably kill me for putting that there. But he creates architecture diagrams working with the internal teams here on Microsoft. So that being said, there's a lot of work that kind of goes into that process. So he'll be live streaming that process today. So feel free to join. It is from 2:15 to 3:45 p.m. Eastern time. So if you're on the West Coast, that's 11:15 a.m. But yeah, it'll be a live stream. If you aren't able to attend but wanted to catch it, again, it will be posted and recorded on YouTube. So no worries if you can't join today. But it's just a good opportunity to see if you wanted to create your own architecture diagrams, what his process kind of looks like, and how you can create your own professional diagrams. That being said, the meeting link is there. That will take you to, I believe, our LinkedIn page for the actual event. And from there, you can go and click on joining the event whenever it does go live. Again, it's hosted through our YouTube page. So if you're also having that link on the side there, you can just go to that as well. It'll be live streamed there as well as, like I said, LinkedIn. But there's the meeting link if you are interested. So I will go ahead and start. I'm the first speaker today, believe it or not. So I figured I would just go ahead and continue on with the agenda. So this is something new as well, something called the Microsoft Ignite show floor interviews. You might all have seen it on our LinkedIn page. If not, again, this is something new that we're doing. If you all are going to Ignite, or if any of you are planning on attending Ignite, we are hosting Ignite show floor interviews. And basically what they are, they're quick 5 to 7 dynamic minute interviews done at your booth, or if you don't have a booth, then we can connect and we can figure out a time for you to come to our booth. We have a screen in the back if you wanted to display a demo or something of the sorts. But we're offering that to kind of allow customers or stakeholders that regularly interact with us to showcase their technology, showcase what they're doing, talk a little bit about the demo that they might be showing. And like I said, this would be live streamed through our YouTube page and also our LinkedIn. So if you are interested, on the resource page on the right-hand side there, you can go ahead and click that here link, and that'll take you to my LinkedIn post. And from there, if you were interested, just feel free to comment, and I can reach out to you with more information. But Super new thing that we're doing this year. Super interested in getting some MVPs. If you're interested in attending, or if you already are attending Ignite, to come by our booth and do an interview. But let you sit on that. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Francisco.
Thank you, Kiana. Let me just take control. Cool. So, hi all, my name is Francisco Correa. I'm a Senior Technical Program Manager at the Azure Arc Jumpstart team. And today I'll be presenting a bit about the updates right from the September release notes. So let's go ahead and just go over these updates. We had a release that was packed with kind of features and bug fixes. So the first thing, it was the deprecation of cluster API or CAPI from all our Jumpstart. So basically we remove the implementation of CAPI from all our scenarios, right, from Agora, from all our products. This was a big change, right? And actually we introduced K3s as kind of the default Kubernetes distribution across our products. Then we also introduced a lot of critical Arcbox bug fixes. So there were issues around, deployment failing due to kind of the winged bootstrapping. We had some also deployment failures if there was no kind of email recipient for the auto shutdown. We also had a big kind of feature improvement when it comes to the support for Arc-enabled SQL servers, a kind of least privilege feature. We also then included the automated backups for our Arc-enabled SQL server, and also we included the latest performance dashboard. That was a quite big change, right? Adding a lot of kind of features to Azure Arcbox. And then also we updated the AKS templates to use the auto upgrade channels. When it comes to HCI box, we also kind of had some kind of small fixes, mainly on our documentation. We had some critical Jumpstart Agora bug fixes. So basically, there was a bug with the new version of Azure AT operations that we fixed, right? So now it's working with the latest and greatest. We had some issues when it comes to contoso motors. There was a dashboard that was not working correctly. We fixed that. There was another issue with InfluxDB, that the login was not working. That was fixed. And then we also kind of updated some of our documentation and screenshots across Agora. And then we have some other kind of documentation updates and some other kind of bug fixes, right? When it comes to Arc-enabled Kubernetes, there was some bug fixing there with AKS Edge Essentials single node deployment. We did some bug fixing also with the Arc-enabled data services in order to keep up to date with the September release. And there was another bug fixing when it comes to Azure AT operations, right? And using the latest version. So that's a bit of, this kind of release here in September. Now let's go ahead and talk a bit about drops. Again, we keep seeing a lot of traction when it comes to drops. Every month we're getting between 4 to 5 new drops. In this particular month, we got 4 new drops, which was basically one, how to use Key Vault extension to acquire certificates on Arc-enabled Windows servers. So basically how you can enable these bring it into Arc-enabled servers using Key Vault and using a certificate. Then we have a drop from Mike from our team also on how to use the multi-cloud connector from Azure Arc in order to how to get your AWS EC2 instances, right, or any other kind of AWS resources into Azure, right, leveraging Azure Arc. And then we had 2 new drops, right, which is basically for what we used to be called Edge Storage Accelerator, ESA, which is now, right, the Azure Edge volumes. So now we have 2 drops there in order to kind of enable, right, Azure Container Storage, right, enable by Azure Arc, in order to get, right, for example, all your local storage in your Kubernetes cluster all the way up to the cloud. And if you have any questions there, probably like Kiana knows a lot more about that. And then finally, we have what we know as every month we're presenting what we call the drop of the month. In particular, this one it's pretty new, as from Chris O'Cramon, right? It's a really nice drop, right? That talks actually how you can use Gen AI in order to optimize your factory operations. It really encourage everyone to go and look at it, right? It's just we merged it yesterday. It's called Talk to Your Factory. And basically, what this is doing is, it will help you how to discover how to use, Gen AI, IoT, and kind of this edge computing in order to optimize factory operations. You'll be able to kind of see real-time, data processing. You can see, right, what's, let's say smart interactions between machines and operators, right? And you try to, showcase an end-to-end demo of this kind of industry 4.0 technology. So, again, really encourage everyone to go and check the link. I'm going to also be putting the link on the chat so that you can go over and check it. You can download it and you can run it, right? It should be pretty simple, pretty straightforward with great documentation. And with that, Kiana, that's it from my side, and I'll hand it back to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Francisco. Our next presenter is Arnav. Arnav, if you wanted to, the presentation just went away. Let me go ahead and start presenting again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, hang on 1 second. Let me represent. And then it'll scroll through to the slide, and then you can request to take control and we can go from there.
Great.
I hate how Microsoft Teams makes you start from the beginning of the slide deck if you're presenting from PowerPoint, but you should be able to take control now.
Okay, perfect. Well, we have to adapt for the adaptive cloud. So
exactly.
I'm going to go ahead and take control. So hey everyone, Arnav from the Azure Arc-enabled server team, PM from the team, and we wanted to provide some updates for you all in terms of what's coming up. So we had our latest agent release in September. And so some notes from our September release that we wanted to highlight for everyone is really our added distro support, right? You'll notice that we added support for Azure Linux 3 or Mariner 3. We also started to add initial support for ARM64, which has been a big ask from our customers. So we're excited that with our ARM64 support, we've started with SLES 15 and Amazon Linux as well. But you'll see over time that we're going to add more and more Linux distros for our ARM64 support, and expect to see a blog announcement of that coming up in October as we add a couple of more distros with this latest agent release in October. One final thing we wanted to call out with this ARM64 support is that the architecture supports not the totality of all extensions and management services. Some of the capabilities supported include run command, the custom script extension, and AMA extension. So just be mindful that not all of the management services support the ARM64 architecture. We do document some of this, but this is something to be mindful of. Another thing we wanted to highlight is the end of year for Windows Server 2012 ESUs is actually coming up. So that's October 10th of this year, so in about 8 days. And so when year 1 ends, if you're already an ESU customer, you actually get automatically transitioned to year 2 with no problem. If you're already on Azure Arc, you just keep getting billed. There is no year 1 cliff. But you are a volume licensing customer. Again, we want to reiterate, we do have that option for you to transition to Azure Arc. And so you're able to provision an ESU license specifying your invoice ID for year 1. And that way you don't get back billed for year 1, and you get entitlement for year 2 and onward of ESUs through Azure Arc. So we're seeing quite a few customers already provision this, but just a reminder that deadline is coming up soon following that first patch Tuesday of October for y'all. So excited about that year-to-year transition as well for ESUs enabled by Azure Arc. And so again, that's a reminder that that's coming up. Can't believe it's already been a year of ESUs in market. So with that, we do have some exciting public preview news. So that's the public preview of the Windows Server hot patch enabled by Azure Arc for Windows Server 2025. So you likely saw this blogged both in the Azure Arc blog and the Windows Server blog, but now we have Windows Server hot patch enabled by Azure Arc in public preview. So if you have a Windows Server 2025 instance, you might be able to see the hot patch capability card enablement already show up for those instances. So what is Windows Server hot patch, right? Hot patches are basically OS security updates that don't require a reboot. It works by patching the in-memory code of running processes without the need to restart the process. So this can have substantial improvements in terms of your operational resiliency, reducing the overhead for your OS patch updates, right? For your Windows Server 2025 standard and data center editions. And so we wanted to share that public preview is now available. And here in the screen, you can see both the Azure Arc installer. So you have the Connected Machine Agent installer built in to the Windows Server 2025 Data Center and Standard Edition setup. So you can simply configure that as you get started with Windows Server 2025. And then you see all you have to do is to enable the hot patch, the directions there in terms of the aq.ms link. And on the bottom right, you're seeing what that hot patch looks like, where you have no reboot and an OS update for Windows Server 2025 Standard Data Center Edition. So this is really exciting capability that we have. And so we're looking forward to having customers try out 2025 Standard Data Center Edition and see all of the Arc capabilities involved there, and especially try out the public preview for Windows Server hot patch. So this is the big public preview drop for this month, so we're excited to see that participation. And with that, I'll hand it over to Nikita from the Arc SQL Server team.
Sounds good. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Let's go through the updates for Azure Arc-enabled SQL Server. So just to introduce myself, I'm Nikita Tuckrew. I'm a product manager in the Azure Arc-enabled Data Services team, and one of the areas that I lead is security. So today I'm really excited to be here to go over the latest updates in this space for Azure Arc-enabled SQL Server, and also to talk a little bit about security as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right in. Let's first start by going over some of the new exciting updates that are there as part of our upcoming release. So as part of the September release, which we just had, a few exciting features which went out. One is availability groups. The inventorying of this is now generally available for all license types to customers. So if you go in to, say, the Azure portal, you'll see a tab for availability groups where you can see all of your availability groups that are there and the metadata properties associated with that. So feel free to take a look and try that feature out. In addition to this, another update is that applying physical core license types to physical core machines is also generally available. So those were some of our updates from the September release, but I also wanted to go through a few updates from some of the previous releases as well. So I've highlighted a few key ones here, but definitely do go to our release notes for Azure Arc-enabled SQL Server, where you'll see all of this plus much more in detail. So if you want to try out any of the features, that's a great way to see that, and I'll add that in the chat after. Couple of updates for extended security updates, ESU. So if you have ESU subscription for SQL Server 2014, that's automatically going to start billing when the SQL Server 2014 ESU program starts. Additionally, for ESU subscription for SQL Server 2012 and for SQL Server 2014, it can also be activated using the ESU P-Core license with unlimited virtualization. So that's one update which we're excited about. Two other kind of areas that I wanted to touch on. One is one of the updates that we had made in the previous month was for migration assessment. So migration assessment for SQL Server enabled by Azure Arc at a high level will tell you, which of your workloads are ready to migrate, what the confidence rating is, and it will look at, 3 different targets in Azure that you could potentially go to. One of the updates that we actually made to migration assessment is it used to run every Sunday around 11 p.m. But in the latest release, what happens is you can actually initiate that assessment whenever you want it to execute. In addition to this, Arc SQL Server also supports being able to move resources to different subscriptions or resource groups. So if you ever have a need to do that, that capability is also available. And then, yes, so those were all the updates I wanted to go through. Definitely do read our release notes where we have this and a lot more features that are there to try out and, give us feedback. We're always open to that. The next piece that I wanted to talk about is some security updates with everyone on this call as well. So the first update here that I wanted to share is that we've actually published a Azure Arc-enabled SQL Server security guide, which is live on our documentation, and you can actually access this today. I've added, kind of a picture here of what this looks like. It's live on Docs, and I would recommend that, everyone who's on the call definitely go here to learn the details and take a look and really understand how security for Azure Arc-enabled SQL Server works. We're really, really excited to have got this out, and we also worked with the Arc Server team who's jointly launched their security guide as well. So if you have any questions about the Arc Server level, the Arc SQL Server instance level, definitely do check both of those out on our documentation site. Next, I'm going to go over some of the key security best practices that are there for Azure Arc-enabled SQL Server. This and much more is also listed on our security guide. So a couple of areas that I wanted to cover. The first best security practice is to enable least privileges mode. Today, what this means is you can actually configure the extension service to run with minimal required permissions. When you go in and you configure this least privileges mode option, what happens is the extension service is running as NT Service SQL Server Extension Service Account. And this is a local Windows service account that's created and managed by the Azure Extension for SQL Server deployer when least privileges is enabled. It's also granted the minimum required permissions for running the Azure Extension for SQL Server on the Windows operating system. What this means is it only has access to folders or directories which are used for reading, storing configuration changes, or writing logs. In addition to this, it's updated when these permissions are no longer necessary. So for example, let's say you disable a feature, you disable the least privileges mode configuration, or you even uninstall the Azure extension for SQL Server, these permissions will no longer remain once they're not required. So that's another piece. Now, in the coming months, we're really excited to share, right, that least privileges mode will be the default for, your existing servers with the extension version that's June 2024 or later. So you'll see this kind of being rolled out to, help, right, and bolster security. Now, if you want least privileges mode today, right, and you don't want to wait for when this is gradually rolled out to you, you can enable this with the AZ-CLI command. And this is in our documentation page in least privileges. Just run that command and it will become available to you. Now, for some reason, let's say you don't want least privileges mode. To prevent this automatic update of least privileges, you can just block the extension upgrade to the version that's listed here, and it's also on our documentation page. So that's one of the best security practices and something that we're really excited about. The second security practice that I wanted to talk about is running the SQL best practices assessment and reviewing and applying the recommendations that it provides. So the best practices assessment is in Azure Arc-enabled SQL Server. It's one of the features that we have. And at a high level, what it's doing is it's providing you with a way to evaluate the configuration of your SQL Server instance. So after you enable the feature, it's actually scanning across your SQL Server instance and databases and providing you with recommendations for things like SQL Server and database configuration, index management, and much more. So when it comes to security for BPA, there's some, minimum permissions that are needed to access and read the report. Those are listed in our security guide. Do take a look. The SQL Server instance should also have TCP/IP protocol enabled, and SQL BPA uses something that we call the Azure Monitor Agent, AMA agent, to collect and analyze data from your SQL servers. And all the other details can be found in the white paper, but I would definitely encourage everyone to try the SQL best practices assessment, read the white paper for more details. The third security practice that I wanted to talk about is enabling Microsoft Entra authentication. What this is Microsoft Entra ID. It's a cloud-based identity and access management service to enable access to external resources. And this is really useful because it provides more enhancements when you think about traditional username and password-based authentication. Now, for SQL Server enabled by Azure Arc specifically, Microsoft Entra ID authentication is there for SQL Server 2022 and above, right? So for those versions, and it's providing you with centralized identity and access management solution when it comes to SQL Server. Now, when you think about security specifically for Arc SQL Server, the certificate for Microsoft Entra ID is being stored in Azure Key Vault. So that's one piece to keep in mind. And then the fourth and final security best practice, which I'll leave you with, is enabling Microsoft Defender. So what Microsoft Defender is it's continuously assessing and looking at your, hybrid multi-cloud SQL Server estate to secure and protect against any vulnerabilities and threats which are detected. So if Microsoft Defender detects that there is an action, right, you need to take, it will tell you what the issue is, the severity level, is it high, medium, or low, how you can mitigate the issue, and which resources are affected. And when it comes to security for Microsoft Defender for Cloud, it requires the Azure Monitoring Agent to be configured on the Arc-enabled server. So those were some of the kind of key security updates from this white paper that I wanted to share with you. But definitely do take a look at our new security guide and do check out the release notes for Azure Arc-enabled SQL Server, where we post each month's feature updates that are there. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and I'll hand it over to the next speaker.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to take control. Thanks, Nikita, for the handoff. Okay, that seems to have worked. So I am not Nancy Jorgensen. Yes, definitely don't look like her. She's on my team. Unfortunately, she's ill today, so I'm very happy to be here presenting in her stead. My name is James Scott, and I'm the product manager lead for Azure Sphere and some other edge security projects. So for those of you who don't know what Azure Sphere is, I'm not sure if anyone is in that bucket, but here's a dev board with an Azure Sphere chip on it. And this little chip here is the MT3620 from MediaTek. That is an ARM microprocessor that runs the Azure Sphere operating system. And we have a series of services that talk to that device. It's essentially a small IoT device secured by Microsoft that you can run customer applications on. That is, we don't have time here to go into the full product. Happy to talk with anyone about that offline. The announcement here today, that's why we're joining the community call, is that some element of the Azure Sphere product is retiring with a full replacement and, in fact, an improvement. And that's what we call our legacy interfaces. So what's retiring is the legacy CLI, which is a command line interface tool called AzSphere, or you type AzSphere, and the API, the REST API that is underneath that. We have a retirement path for 3 years there, so plenty of time to migrate. And what the recommended user action is to migrate to our replacement product, improved product, Azure Sphere Integrated before that date. Azure Sphere Integrated is it's just a better interface, which is why we've gone down that path. So with the legacy product, there was an entirely separate REST API for accessing Azure Sphere services. With the integrated product, we've essentially integrated that into Azure Resource Manager, which means that you get an integrated REST API. The tooling is now integrated into the CLI, the Azure CLI, instead of being a standalone CLI tool. You have Azure Portal Access as well. And in addition, you can leverage the power of other Azure services that's kind of just work now as part of ARM, including fine-grained user access with Azure Role-Based Access Control, and using Azure Monitor, which can help you with collecting your Azure Sphere metrics to help you receive alerts for critical events, and also use Azure Monitor in a way that correlates events that might happen with Azure Sphere devices with their upstream services like Azure IoT Hub, to help diagnose things, when things are complicated and actually have multiple data points across multiple systems. So the migration to Azure Sphere Integrated became generally available, I think, in March. So customers can migrate easily anytime. For convenience, we've designed it so there's no one-time migration here. You turn on Azure Sphere Integrated access to your existing tenant, and then you can take your time to migrate over both your interactive user workflows and your automated workflows to Integrated, and then at some point turn off legacy access. Of course, we will turn off legacy access in 3 years' time on 27th September 2027, but we encourage people to migrate as soon as possible because of all those benefits of Azure Sphere Integrated that make it the better choice, the more secure choice, the more observable choice. So that's it for me. Happy to take any questions when we're in the Q&A part.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and take control back. Thanks, James. All right. So yes, our next call will be next month on Wednesday, the first Wednesday always. So that would be the 6th of November. But we can go ahead and start the Q&A if anyone has questions. I know this is everyone's favorite part because everyone just raises their hand for this one. So feel free to come off mute if you have any questions. I don't know why, but the Q&A section looks to be disabled from my side, even though I enabled it for this call. So if you all aren't able to see the Q&A, also let me know because I'm not able even to see it from my side. And I don't think some of the presenters are either. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to come off mute, raise your hand. We're happy to answer any questions or take any questions. Don't everyone jump at once. How many of you are attending Ignite by show of hands? Is anyone attending Ignite? I know some MVPs are attending. Wasn't sure if any of you are. Okay, very cool. All right. be sure if you want to do an Ignite show floor interview, feel free to reach out. I posted the link in the chat. We're happy to talk about what you're working on, things that you're interested in, that type of stuff. It's a very like low key interview, 5 to 7 minutes, just talking about fun things. So, any questions though from anyone? I'll wait for another 10 seconds. So if you have a question, or if you think of another question afterwards, feel free. I believe this chat is open within the actual Teams channel. If you haven't already, please join the Teams channel, so you'll have access to the chat. But if you don't have any questions, then I can move to the next slide. Going once, going twice. Alrighty. So thanks for attending, everyone, today. I believe this is one of our shorter calls, but if you have any feedback for us, or if you would like to see any topics in our next call, feel free to submit the survey there. It's linked at the bottom. But I will see everyone in November, hopefully. And then, like I said, if you're attending Ignite, please reach out and join our live stream today if you can. All right. Thanks, everyone.